is in the building. Facto.
Welcome to Ignorance Is Contagious, a podcast about stories and the life lessons you learn from them. I'm James Legrand.
And I'm Abdul Majid.
In today's episode, we're telling the story of Marc Littlemore and how he almost lost his life. A British senior software engineer, Marc recants his near-death experience, and we ask the question, are you living your best life? With us, as always, is the lover of all things funny, Kristen J. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thought it would only be appropriate for this Easter weekend that we spoke about life and death. As I was going down this rabbit hole of a bunch of different stories, the reason I chose this particular one is because it felt to me the most common scenario for a person to suddenly die. It wasn't about a fire or a plane crash. It was just something that could happen to anyone and something that we probably know of that happened to someone. Because as I was reading the story, thought about 3 people instantly within the last 2 years who passed away suddenly. With that being said, Kristen J., take it away.
Okay, so this is an article by a gentleman named Marc Littlemore. He is a senior software engineering manager, and the article is entitled, How I Almost Died. Back in 2014, I almost died. Here's my story. How do you start to tell someone that you nearly died, that your wife watched you in intensive care fighting for your life, that your children nearly lost their father when he was only 42? It's a story I never thought I'd have to tell, but I've spent the past couple of years recounting this tale to many people. They're interested, yet shocked. They want to know more, yet always squirm at the details. Most people can't believe it happened. I often can't believe it happened. It feels like a really bad dream or a fly-on-the-wall documentary. I've wanted to write it down since it happened, but never felt able to do it. So finally, here it is, a brief account of how I almost died. The beginning. June 2014 started off as a normal month. My son's 7th birthday in early June. My best mate Mark's annual birthday party in the middle of the month, which always involves a few beers and DJing some tunes to celebrate, this year being his 43rd birthday. On Wednesday, June 18th, a train ride down to the BBC offices in London to talk about our team becoming part of my BBC initiative. Post-meeting, we gathered for some food at an African restaurant around the corner from Euston Station. Some deliciously hot and spicy jerk chicken was devoured with some not so tasty, in my opinion, African ginger beer. Nothing unusual, and I returned home to Warrington on the train, having eaten my last solid meal in what would become a couple of months. The illness starts. The next day is when it started. It was me feeling a bit poorly, as your mom might say. I came home from work because I was feeling intermittently hot and cold. From previous experience, this was a telltale sign of a stomach bug, and sure enough, the evening was filled with the joy that is vomiting and diarrhea. I texted my boss to tell him I wasn't going to be in on Friday morning, as I'd been up all night throwing up. I felt terrible because I had to cancel my plans to give a lesson at his wife's school where we planned to teach 10 and 11-year-olds how to write video games. My wife, Claire, thought it was unusual for me to be so sick and took me to the doctor. The doctor gave me some Diarrhea sachets to rehydrate myself with and sent me home. Over the weekend, I attempted to take them and to drink lots of the classic British cure for illness, Lucozade. I couldn't keep it down either. Family plans were canceled as I continued being ill all weekend. Claire quickly ushered me to the doctor again on Monday morning, noting that I was having difficulty even walking, which seemed somewhat unusual for a case of gastroenteritis. The locum doctor was at the surgery, and he examined me much more closely. Apparently, touching my stomach made me cry out in pain. I have no recollection of this, but it was enough for him to refer to me to the accident and emergency department immediately. The symptoms appeared more serious to him than were first imagined. I think he was probably the first person to save my life. Accident and emergency. This is where my memory starts to get hazy and my wife's memory takes over. She'd already taken the morning off work, having needed to drive me to the doctor's surgery, so she drove me to the accident and emergency department at Warrington Hospital. I almost collapsed while trying to sit down in the waiting room, and thankfully, the doctor's referral note meant a swifter move through the triage to be seen by one of the A&E doctors. They realized that I was massively dehydrated, having not managed to keep much liquid down for nearly 5 days, and I was admitted to a ward. I was taken to a separate room rather than a ward with the other patients. Understandably, you can never be too sure how contagious a patient is when you don't know what they've got. I was given intravenous fluids and left while NHS staff looked after me and tried to determine what was wrong. Claire brought the children to visit me, and by Tuesday, she was told that I was looking better, although she noted that I was very confused. I remember being convinced that the son of a friend of ours had been killed in a car accident. I forced her to Google it on her phone, but thankfully she couldn't find anything. I'd been given morphine for the pain, which probably explains why I was having vivid hallucinations, but they still weren't sure what was wrong. Apparently, I told the consultant that I was feeling fine and that he should send me home. He was wise enough to realize that another day in the hospital was a good idea. He was probably the second person to save my life.
James, first, what do you think of the story so far?
Unfortunately, it's a story I've heard many times before. There are a lot of people who start a normal day and then find themselves in a hospital battling for their lives and not understanding why. So sometimes it can take time to understand, with all the different symptoms that are surfacing, what the root cause of the issue is. And of course, until the doctors know what the root cause of the issue is, it's hard to treat it. They can keep you comfortable, but they can't really solve the problem until they know what the problem is. So far, this is, a story I think a lot of people can relate to, either having gone through it themselves or someone they care about having gone through it, or perhaps a coworker or a business partner.
Kristen, any thoughts so far about the first third of the story?
Yeah, why has it got to be the African food, Mark?
It was the Jamaican ginger beer, I think, that he didn't like.
Yeah, he didn't like the ginger beer, but
I don't think
the jerk
chicken in there. I think
yeah, the jerk chicken too, though. He had that jerk chicken.
Well, he's a white British guy, so what are you gonna do? Taste buds.
I think the scary thing is whatever's going on is something that can be transmitted so very easily. Foods, utensils, doorknobs, all those kinds of things. And people in general are so nasty. So, I mean, it's just, you don't want to live your life super paranoid about every little single solitary little thing, but it's like something this deadly or dangerous can happen so very easily.
Yeah, I think about when I hear stories like this, I think about my boy Titty. I wrote a story about him in our book. His name was Michael Tyrone. Michael Tyrone and I used to work together. And he was also a mechanic. He was like a part-time mechanic. And he fixed my car every once in a while when things would happen. I'd pay him to fix my car. I remember talking to him one day in the morning, and then him and another coworker of ours went to this buffet place, and he ate a dish that he didn't think. So he was allergic to shellfish. And he didn't know that this particular dish that they had the pan in had shrimp in it before. He ate the dish, walked outside, and what's it called? Anaphylactic shock. Yeah. And he died right there. I was just talking to this guy not too long ago. Come back, and he dies outside of the buffet place. I guess cases like this or stories like this I've heard way too many times before. So I guess it leads to my another question I have for you guys. Well, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Have you ever spoke to somebody in the morning and then later that day they weren't there? They passed away.
Yeah. One of my closest friends, Tony Russo, spoke to him at 10:42 a.m. We were having a conversation. I remember that clearly because I had an 11 o'clock meeting. And it was just a normal conversation, just saying hi. We were talking about some things. And he's like, okay, I know you got to get going, bro. I know you got your meeting coming up. Have a great day. Talk to you later. Just normal, right? I have a habit of saying to all my friends that I love them, every one of them. So when I end every conversation, it's I love you, bro. And I said, okay, bro, love you, man. Talk to you later, right? Hung up with him at 11. That night, think somewhere between 5 and 6 o'clock. I'm not sure the exact time. His wife calls me. His wife never calls me, not directly. She'll text me, she'll do something like that, but she never calls me. So her number shows up on my phone, and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" I immediately get out of my seat. What's going on? And she's fighting back tears to say, "I regret to inform you that Tony passed away." What happened was earlier in the afternoon, he was at home and he was just getting hot. He couldn't understand what was going on, but his body was just heating up and he couldn't get cool. By the time he called her, and thankfully she worked close to home. She decided to come home, and she got home. And by the time she got home, he was near naked. He was just trying to cool off. She knew something was wrong. She went to the other room to get the phone to call the hospital, and when she got back, he was gone. He had a massive heart attack known as the Widowmaker. What they said was he could have been in the emergency room at the time that the Widowmaker heart attack started, and they wouldn't have been able to help him. It was that aggressive, that fast. So yeah, I spoke to him that morning. By that afternoon, he was gone, and I was aware of it, early that evening.
Kristen, anything like that?
Not quite that quickly, but I have had cases where I was texting somebody and maybe like 2 days later, I found out that they passed on, and I was like, wait, what? One of which actually was Clay Evans, the manager for Lil Duval. We had been communicating because Lil Duval was on one of the shows that I was working with. And then it was like, I saw a post like the next day, Rip and the classic Dove and the prayer hands. And I was just like, what? So I reached out to some of the other people that were working on the show and I was like, is this real? Is this true? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. He actually was interviewed in the Freaknik special that we just watched, that we covered in.
Who's the guy?
Clay Evans.
Oh, Clay Evans. Okay. Yeah.
He's a talent manager. Another comedian, Angelo. Oh man, Angelo. Wow, why his last name escapes me at the moment, but Angelo was one of our regulars at with the show, and I learned he was ill, so I reached out to him and had some words back and forth. I mean, like, hey, what's up? How you doing? Everything good? And then it was like someone let me know just how bad off he was, and then Angelo Lozada, he didn't make it. So that was really, Angelo was like, oh, dude, he's just somebody that's very sad. And then my landlord here at the building, it was like, hey, you're gonna be able to do so-and-so. I don't know what time we get home. Yeah, I'll check it out. Let me know. Hey, just following up. This is me texting. I know you don't see me, people, but I'm doing this crazy motion, like I'm double thumbing texting or whatever, which is insane. Nobody does that. But then it was like the building owner was just like, sending that email of, I regret to inform you. And I was like, what? He had cancer, but we didn't know about it.
There is way too many people who I've actually spoke to and then they passed away. I remember, well, one, I'm not laughing because I'm trying to figure out how I can tell this story. There was one gentleman who I was talking to as he got shot. Like we were in the middle of a conversation. And I see his eyes get really big. And the guy came around and you remember several people who passed away. You're talking to them and come in, I just spoke to them yesterday and they passed away. My mother was a situation like that with my mother. I saw my mother one weekend. Next weekend she was gone.
Can I just share that I had a moment where I thought it was actually going to be my turn?
Oh, hold on to that story.
I won't remember it. You know this.
You will, because I have a question. I have a question based around something like that. Okay.
It's not funny, but it's funny because I'm here. So,
Kristen, do you think you're making the best use of your life right now?
No, I'm doing the best I can, but I mean, I'm not making the best use. No.
Well, okay. James, same question. Do you think you're making the best use of your life right now?
Absolutely. I spend every day thinking about what else can I do? What more can I do? How can I be better, do better, be more, all those things. Who can I help? All those things. So I spend a lot of time just kind of reassessing where I am and what I'm doing and the impact that I am or am not having.
I always say I think I'm making a good use, but the best use, I don't know. Because sometimes I'll be on Twitter and I'll look up and the hour's gone by, or I'll be on Instagram and the hour's gone by. I'm like, what am I doing? This is wasting away time looking at pictures and scrolling and listening to videos on YouTube, what have you. I don't think those are the best use of my time. I do think I always strive to use my time better than I have been. I do think
I
that
would say, if I can append to that for a second, if
Mhm.
that hour on Twitter, that hour on TikTok is allowing you some time for self-care, then it is a good use of that time. If you're
I,
spending all day there every day, then
yeah,
that's a different topic.
no, it's not. It's not self-care. It's just looking at half naked women.
That can be self-care too.
Half naked women. Yes, Kristen.
I know you like that style of self-care.
Can I just say I have a nasty habit of wanting things to be in place and be a certain way before I do things, but I'm doing better with dropping that whole practice. And as I live a little bit longer each day, I understand old people more every day, where they're just like F it with a lot of things. And I do find myself releasing certain beliefs and practices and things that I've held on to that no longer work. I go back and redo, reevaluate, renovate, rejudge my beliefs and habits and things like that. It's like at this point in my life, certain things I'm just like, okay, you were concerned and tried to look at this a certain way. It's not working for you any longer. Let it go. So I'm getting there. I'm not there yet, but there's also for me, and this is something that I always think about, is how I grew up where my moves were a reflection of my parents. So I was conscious of how I do and say certain things in public or how I carry myself. And like, I never cursed because my mother worked in the school district that I went to, and I was afraid somebody would go back and tell her. So even when I got to college, I'm going to school out of state. I'm like, oh, I can curse now, but I would still whisper for the fear that somebody would get back to her and let her know that I cursed. I'm a whole grown ass woman and still am hesitant to just curse. And I even said on Ignorance is Contagious, I said in one of the episodes, I used the word super dick. I hope my mother never hears that. And I said it again. But I mean, there's like a piece of me that's not fully free. And I'm so grown. I have a grown child, but I'm still living in this world of how I move about based on something that's not necessarily freeing. So there's that. Thank you for listening.
For anyone who didn't listen to the previous episode, which you should, Kristen has a gentleman in her phone labeled as Super Dick. So for the record, there is in her phone, she typed out the words and saved it Super Dick.
Nobody needed you to go ahead on and stress that. And
I just want to let anybody know the
he all the way double clicked on it.
Really hope my mama never hears that. So I'll just lie. I'll be like, I don't even know what he's talking about.
It should be like, give me your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, she knows how to work phones too, her old self.
Okay.
Thank you.
James, name me one thing you want to do before you die.
One thing left? I've kicked a lot of things off my list already. I think I want to definitely spend some time in Thailand. Thailand calls to me. My son Jordan went to Thailand twice. On his first time going, we were talking back and forth, and he's like, "Dad, this is your place." He's like, "This place was made for you." And I think for me to go to a place that, and my son, Abdul, you know how close Jordan and I are. My son Jordan, for him to say that, as well traveled as he is a big deal. And he went a second time and came back and said the same thing again. He's like, "Dad, this is your place. This is your country. This is where you would go and probably never want to leave." So I want to spend some time in Thailand. Definitely vacation, possibly move. Based on his high recommendation.
Is it the girly boys?
Nah, no girly boys. That's not his style. That's not my style. I will fight for their right to do what they do and to exist and be free to express, but not a personal interest of mine.
Diddy loves the girly boys.
That's the rumor.
Oh,
That's
that's a big check.
allegedly.
Oh my
I'm
Allegedly.
surprised.
God.
I'm surprised he didn't go to Thailand. I'm surprised he's not in
Oh,
Thailand
God.
right now or Bali with Russell. You know.
And this is the ignorance portion of Ignorance is Contagious.
Hey,
Same
that's
question to you,
that
Kristen.
part of that culture exists. You got to acknowledge
Yeah.
that. That's there. That's there. But
I-
it's not the
Choices
whole
vary.
culture. That's not even half
Yeah,
the
it's not the
culture.
whole culture. Yeah,
It's a subculture.
yeah. It's underneath the surface. No pun intended. Hold on. Kristen, same question. Name me one thing you want to do before you die.
Well, I mean, travel, period. Like I started getting into it, but the pandemic really shut me down heavily. And I was supposed to go someplace last year and that didn't happen. So I need to get back into traveling because I want to see what's going on all over this planet. So I know that's not one thing, that's multiple, but travel, definitely get back into. And when I say travel, I mean outside of the country.
I would say get married. Never been married. When I see it done right, my brother James, my brother Jabir, some other people that I know, if we're in really loving, healthy relationships, I always want to do that one at one point. But you got to find the right person and that whole thing. But it seems like it's a life-altering, uplifting experience if you find the right partner.
You want to find the right partner. You better make sure you can be the right partner. Sorry, thank you. And you better not edit that. You better not edit that out either. You better not edit that.
All you're gonna say, you better find the right super dick.
There's always somebody talking about some dodge that bullet, and that's the gun talking. I'm just saying.
Whatever you say, I'm just gonna edit super dick. You saying super dick there. Have you ever been in a near-death experience or situation you thought you were not going to get out of? And if so, what happened?
Yes. Okay. This is crazy because it was something as simple as indigestion, but it was on a level that I had never experienced before. And I was by myself and my chest was hurting. And I was like, oh, damn, is this a heart attack? What the hell is this? I really didn't think I was going to go out like this. I got so much more stuff I want to do. I haven't been anywhere. I haven't been to Thailand is on my list of places to go also, James. So I'm sitting here going through, I got to go here. I got to go there. And some other things that I need to tackle, but that's not for this show. But I'm sitting here going through the whole thing. I drink some water and I'm immediately fine. So I was like, okay, that doesn't seem like drinking water would solve a heart attack. But I mean, the pain was unbelievable. And the thing was, I wasn't eating anything and I hadn't eaten anything for a while. So it was weird where it came from. It was weird how it happened. I survived it. I had that happen to me a couple more times, but every time drinking some water immediately made me better. So I was like, well, it's not a heart attack, so I'm good.
Was this before or after you met Super Dick?
And was that a near-death experience?
Yes. Was he causing the indigestion?
No indigestion from Super Dick. No.
James, the same question. Have you ever been in a near-death experience or a situation you thought you weren't going to get out of? And if so, what happened?
So it's an interesting question. I'm going to have to answer this two different ways. Have I ever been in a situation where I honestly thought like this is it, like end of story? No, nothing like that. Have I been in situations where I was like it could happen, like where I know I'm going into a situation which may not end well for me? Yes, I've been in those, but I won't call those near death experiences. So those were just highly dangerous situations that either sometimes they came to me, and at least on two occasions I walked into them knowing that it could be bad for me. So yeah, so it's interesting. Kristen's looking at me like, wait, what's that? I'll give you an example. And I won't give all the details because the people involved in this story, I need to protect at least one of their identities. But someone was in trouble. I knew they were in trouble. They needed something in the house they were staying in, but there were people in that house that would not allow them to get it. They asked me for my help. I made one phone call to say, hey, I don't know if I'm going to get out of this situation. I'm walking into a very dangerous situation, and I'm doing it voluntarily and knowingly, but I'm letting you know so someone knows what's going on here. I walked into that situation. Thankfully, a combination of being good at negotiating and being more of a calmer energy, with the fact that one of the people there recognized me as being an instructor in martial arts, kind of helped me go in, take care of the situation with no violence, and then leave with the situation handled. But could that have gone completely bad? Yes. Could I not be sitting here today because of that highly dangerous situation? Yes.
So are you saying you were ready to die?
Yeah.
All right, that's the most gangster thugged out thing I have heard on any of these podcasts to date. Okay. Who am I here with? Who are you guys?
That's one of two occasions that's happened. I won't talk about the second one at all.
That's even more gangster. My
But
God.
yeah, so it wasn't a near death experience the way we're talking about it, where it's typically talked about. But I knew that I was purposely putting myself in a situation that could have ended me, and thankfully it didn't go that way. But I voluntarily did that.
So I don't know if these were near death experiences for me. I know there were close calls. Like I tell you, everybody knows I've been shot at several times and attacked with weapons and stuff like that before. I'll tell you two stories. I don't even know if they're near death. They just felt like I was going to die. One was last year, coming back from South Africa. I was on a plane and we're over the Atlantic, and we're coming from London to the United States, and the plane starts to free fall for like a very long time, to the point of where you had to brace yourself in front of your seat because you're going like nose diving down.
Yeah.
And it was going on for so long, like literally we're dropping for multiple seconds, that you felt like you were going to die. And then the pilot pulls back up, and then he tells everybody to strap in. He looks on because I was in the section right behind first class. That's where the stewardess have their seats. And I could see, we were almost like face to face. And I could see the look on their face like, this isn't normal. And then it happens again. And then it happens again. And then the scariest thing he said to me was, I've been trying to reach to see if there's any other planes in the area to get these turbulence, to see if there's anything else there's more turbulence ahead of us. But there seems to be no one responding. It seems like we're all alone. And when he said, it seems like we're all alone, and we're dipping back and forth, and we're over the Atlantic, and there's nothing there, just water. We're literally just water. And I was like, well, I do have to say, when we were diving down, we were all holding there. I was saying to myself, I can't go out like this. I know I'm not going out like this. I know I'm not going out like this. That's all I could say to myself, in a prayer, of course. But it just kept doing it. And when I say it did a nosedive out of nowhere. Just people falling backwards, you hear people screaming and people crying. When we got past that section, the whole plane erupted in cheer, just because we got past that section. So that's the near-death experience. Then, of course, like I said, I've been around a multitude of violent situations that I go left instead of go right, or I don't dip fast enough. Possibility. But then again, those weren't like near death. Like, so.
Yeah, because what's unique about this, to your point, what's unique about this story is he was in a death situation where he didn't know if he was going to come out of it, right? Like as we go through this story, we're going to hear that. And I think for, what you and I just talked about, Ad, the situations you just described that I described, it's more like, well, actually, no, you were in a near-death experience. I think that's legit to say with the airplane story you just told. In my case, I don't really consider it a near-death experience as much as an experience that could have ended in death, which is a little bit different, you know.
Yeah.
So I think you walk away from both of those situations differently.
Final question for this section. Have you ever saved anyone's life, or has anyone ever saved your life?
Yeah, a couple times, but well, I'll go with one story. I'll go with the simpler one. I was a lifeguard at the Plainfield YMCA in New Jersey. A guy showed up with the Edison Job Corps to swim. They're all going to swim in the pool. The Job Corps gives jobs to kids and helps them get their vocation up so they can find bigger jobs later. And I knew the lifeguard, right? He and I actually went to lifeguard school together. Because I ran the pool, I was going to sit there. I was fully dressed. I had no intention of getting wet that day. He was a lifeguard. He's there, and I'm just supposed to sit there and just make sure they're fine, right? So I had a book with me. I'm not supposed to do anything. But then I heard him say to the kids, "I need to test if you guys can swim or not. Let's go to the deep end." I went, "Whoa, wait a minute." I was like, "If you're going to test them to see if they can swim, shouldn't you do that in the shallow end so that if they can't swim, they can just stand up, right?" Which it makes logical sense. He goes, "Well, for the kids that said they can't swim, they're already in the shallow end, they'll stay there. But these guys said they can swim, so I just want them to show me they can swim, and then they can swim throughout the pool. I'm taking them to the deep end." I'm like, "That's a mistake." He's like, "Look, I'm the lifeguard for this group. You're not. I'm going to do what I'm going to do." So I'm like, "All right." So I go back, sit down, empty my pockets, take my shoes off, and I wait, right? Because I'm like, something bad can happen. So he puts the first two kids in. They swim across, no problem. The third one, I'll never forget it. Tall, thin girl, about 5'9". She jumps in, hands immediately go up. She's drowning. He's going to be captain, saves this girl, right? I'll put it that way. He jumps in to try to save her, and she's terrified. She grabs him by his hair, pushes him under the water, and then stands on his head. Right? Now she's standing on his head while still holding on to his hair. Right? So she's kind of like in a squat position, and she's like this, trying to breathe above the water, but she's drowning him now. Right? So I jump in, still fully dressed, but shoes are off, pockets empty. I jump in. As I'm going towards, I see how the grip she's got on his hair. So I don't want to go anywhere near her. I grab him by his ankle, pull him to the side, which pulls her to the side. So it was a double save. And then when I told the manager on duty what happened, of course, he read this guy the riot act, but I saved two people that day.
Uh-oh.
Wow.
Captain save them all day.
Ready to die and save at the same time.
Ready to die and save people at the same time. I know.
You big head, Tupac.
No, you got a super dick.
We're not doing it.
Never is every whole episode.
No, we're not doing it.
It's a callback. A whole episode.
Come on. A popular episode.
Yeah. Kristen, same question.
No and no.
Okay.
I will say I did have a moment where I was incredibly sad, like really, really, like past depression, just sad, not suicidal, because I'm not brave enough to commit suicide, but I was really, really sad. And a friend of mine, she calls me up and she's like, "Hey, you crossed my mind." And I was riding down the parkway, so I figured, let me call my girl and see if she wants to come out for a drink. So I was like, yes. And I took that call at that time to be a sign that I needed to say yes to that call and to go out with her and accept her invitation because of how depressed and upset I was at that moment. And when we went to like Fridays, she was like, "What's up?" She was cheery and happy. She had no idea. And I was like, "You really saved me." And she said, "What's up?" And I said, I'm really in a space that I did not feel good. And your call just was like, snap out of it. So I said, "Thank you. You saved me." So it wasn't like a physical danger, but it was still a saving, so to speak. So, and she still does that. And I tease her because she has in her family been the person that some of her family members, when right before they passed away, it's almost like they would wait for her before they would go ahead on and check out. So initially I was like, "Oh, that's so sweet. That's so beautiful and wonderful." And then one day I was like, "Hey, you're not the one sending them out, are you?" So we kind of laughed about that. I was like, "I notice you're always present when people, cross over. Are you sending them over?" But she was like, "No. But she's just, I don't know, her spirit, her energy is just kind of like that living guardian angel kind of thing going on. So I'm grateful that her name is Dion McReynolds. I have known her since I was 4, and she's just one of those souls, and she's a twin, and both of them, she and her sister Devana, are just 2 wonderful people that I'm grateful that I have in my life. They're just good people, good souls.
I was
That's
told,
wonderful. Wonderful.
yeah, that's great.
Anyway.
I was
Now, don't mess
told,
up this moment. Don't mess up this moment.
I'm not
Don't
gonna
say,
mess up this moment.
don't mess up
I'm
this
not.
moment. Don't do it, all right?
I'm not. I'm
Don't
not.
don't put no shit on my sugar.
I was told several times that I almost saved somebody's life, or you saved my life, but I think it's hyperbole. I think they were just sad, and I just happened to call at the right time.
That's
But
huge. That is huge. That is
I think
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
but I don't know if it's like a big. I don't know if it's. I check them on everybody. If you know me, you know you're gonna get a call from me at some point, going, "Hey, how you doing? You good?" Blah blah blah, or a text. At least a text, at minimum a text. And so that's the habit of mine. I do have to say, my older brother Mansour, I believe saved my life, but I can't completely prove it. I could have just been injured really badly, but it's just one and the same. When we were kids, we were in a cab. My mother was in the front seat. We were going to my dad's job, and we had to take a cab there at the time. And my sister and I, with my 2 sisters, my older brother and I are in the back of the cab. And we're young. I might have been in the 4th grade, 3rd grade, might have been 3rd grade. I think it was 3rd grade. And so I can't see. I'm sitting behind my mother, so I can't see what's ahead of us. I could just see out the window, but I'm right by the door. And the car starts to slow down almost to a stop. And because it was going over a bump, but I didn't know that. So I opened the door, and as I open the door, the guy hits the gas and takes off. So I'm holding on to this door as the car is driving. Mind you, my sisters are looking at me. No one says anything. No one says stop. No one says, hey, of the wives hanging out off the door handle. Because I was literally the door open all the way. People, my mom and the driver didn't even notice that I was literally hanging onto a door as the guy's flying down the street. And my brother just grabs me by the back of my shirt, pulls me in.
Oof. Yeah, he
Mm.
saved your life.
I
Yeah,
think he did too. The
yeah, me
Diesel.
too.
Yeah.
Diesel, my brother Diesel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he saved my life.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're going to move on to the next section. Kristen.
Then it happened. Apparently, it all happened very fast. Claire left me at the hospital after visiting until 7 p.m., having been told that I was doing well. She rang again at 10 p.m. to check I was okay, and the person who answered the phone said I was fine. She was then rudely awoken at 2:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning by the phone call you never want from a hospital. You need to come to the hospital immediately. Mark is very ill. My blood pressure had dropped through the floor. I had multiple organ failure, and all of my major organs were beginning to shut down. You need to come to the hospital immediately. Mark is very ill. The symptoms seem to be those of sepsis, a condition where the body's immune system goes into overdrive and attempts to protect itself from infection. I was rushed down for a computerized tomography, CT scan, to get a better picture of what was causing the drop in my blood pressure. My wife had a worrying wait at 4 a.m. as the on-call CT radiologist raced to get into the hospital for this emergency procedure. The scan showed a problem somewhere in my bowel, but it wasn't immediately obvious what it was. The order was given to operate that morning to investigate and potentially fix the problem with my bowel. Thankfully, one of their best colorectal surgeons was on hand to perform the operation, but there was no guarantee that I would survive. Saving my life. The operation had concluded that I had an ischemic bowel due to an inadequate blood supply, but the consultants were unsure what was causing it. The infected piece of bowel was removed and an ileostomy was performed, meaning that my small bowel was diverted out of my body. This was done to attempt to allow the bowel to recover, but this meant that I would have a stoma, an opening in my stomach through which the waste travels into a bag. Not very glamorous, but at this point in time, it gave the medical staff the only chance to save my life. They took a sample from my bowel, and this was sent to the microbiologist in order to find the cause of the infection. I was given broad spectrum antibiotics in order to kill it, but these would have side effects of killing good bacteria too. I was then put into a medically induced coma so that my body had a better chance of coping with the drugs that I was being given. I was intubated to prevent asphyxiation, meaning that a large tube was put into my windpipe to keep my airway clear. I was too weak to breathe, so my lungs were now controlled by a ventilator. I was given inotropes to increase the strength of my heartbeat in an attempt to keep the blood flowing properly to my quickly dying organs. My blood was passed through a dialysis machine to clean it of the toxins that were busy attacking me. My blood pressure was dangerously low. My body was dying, but I was kept alive by the miracle of modern medicine until they could determine what was wrong. Every treatment that they were giving me had the potential to cause knock-on effects elsewhere. The ITU consultant spoke to Claire and my family and told them his condition is deteriorating despite increased support, and he is unlikely to survive. His condition is deteriorating despite increased support, and he is unlikely to survive. They were pretty sure I would die that night. Waking up in intensive care. After 6 or 7 days in the induced coma, they started to decrease the amount of drugs that they gave me, meaning that I would drift in and out of consciousness. The combination of powerful coma-inducing drugs, incredibly strong painkillers, antibiotics, and the fact that I had sepsis, which causes confusion and disorientation, meant that I literally had no idea where I was or what was going on. My dreams felt oddly lucid, but were crazy and often involved things that I can only assume that I heard around the bedside. I dreamed that I was being held prisoner and my wife was being blackmailed to release me. I dreamt that I was being operated upon whilst on a boat in the Caribbean. I dreamt that I'd been in a fire in a Victorian building in London, only to be rescued and then subsequently stabbed and died. It's safe to say that my perceived reality was somewhat different to what was actually happening to me. Thanks to Claire, I slowly began to regain some semblance of understanding as to what had happened, and she explained to me that I was in intensive care. The microbiologist had finally discovered that I'd contracted the Streptococcus group A bacteria, which is normally found on the skin and is generally harmless. However, if it gets into the bloodstream or deeper inside the tissues or organs of the body, as it had in my bowels, then it becomes an invasive infection. This seemingly innocuous bacteria had become the source of sepsis and had caused my body to shut down. To this day, they still don't know how I contracted it, although for some time it was thought that it was related to the jerk chicken I'd eaten the week earlier. It took me quite a while to realize that I couldn't speak due to having been intubated and been put on a ventilator to help me breathe, as my lungs weren't functioning well enough to do so on their own. I found that I couldn't move any of my limbs either. It turns out that your muscle atrophies pretty quickly in a hospital if you don't move. I quickly lost over 3 stone in weight and all of my muscle mass, and it would take almost 2 years to get back to a reasonable weight again. In total, I spent 45 days in intensive care, and it was an incredibly difficult time. I was coming to terms with the fact that I had been very ill and my body wasn't functioning very well. I had to learn to breathe on my own again, something that we just take for granted as we just start breathing as babies. Having to learn to wean myself off a ventilator and to use my incredibly weak lungs was a major challenge. The only way I could do it was to think about getting home to Claire and my 2 children, and they gave me the impetus to do it as quickly as my body would let me. I then had to learn to eat again, as I had been tube fed for around 25 to 30 days. Again, this is something that you don't really remember doing as it happens when you're a baby, but I had to be spoon fed yogurt and soup in incredibly small portions until my stomach was ready to digest food properly. This often involved me eating and then being quite violently sick a few minutes later. That quickly became soul destroying when you know you have to put on weight. At this point, I could still barely move, so I was helped by the ITU nurses, dietitians, or family. They encouraged me as best they can, but not being able to move or feed yourself is terribly frustrating. Although I couldn't move my own limbs, I needed to exercise to avoid continued muscle atrophy, and the physiotherapist came daily to start an exercise program. Initially, this involved the use of a hoist, which would be strapped around me to lift me out of bed and into a chair. This allowed me to move into a seated position, and I had to increase my sitting time from 5 minutes up to a few hours. It sounds crazy when you write it down, but I could barely sit unaided for 5 to 10 minutes before I would become lightheaded due to having such low blood pressure. It was often incredibly painful, especially when my limbs were moved by the physio team. But the only way I was going to get to leave intensive care was by being able to have some movement. So again, I had to grin and bear it.
Have you ever had streptococcus or any other sort of coccus?
He was laughing.
Tell me your best coccus story.
No, I've never had strep. I've never had strep.
Okay. No,
Not
I'm
that
sorry.
Oh.
Okay, this is the real question. Do you have an exercise or health routine? And what is the strongest drug that you've ever been on?
Moi?
Yes.
I do
First
sit-ups to the table. What? No, I need to exercise. I don't exercise like I should. I'm actually in physical therapy right now because of sciatica. Ooh, I had a pinched nerve and that sucker was brutal. I have a slight fracture on my lower lumbar. And what was the second part of that? Do I have an exercise routine? And what else now?
What's the strongest drug you've ever been on?
Oxycodone. And it did nothing. The pain that I was going through with that sciatica, it did nothing. I don't like a lot of drugs. I don't like any drugs, actually. I don't even do over-the-counter drugs. But when that pain kicked in like that, I mean, that and the epidural, I did do that from the previous episode. But I did it, but it didn't take the pain away. So I was like, I'm not doing this. If it's not gonna take the pain away, what is the point? So I suffered through that, but I'm better now because of the physical therapy and the things that I'm doing. It was horrible.
So it's just because of the it's because of the sciatica in your lower back.
Stop it. Yes, the sciatica. And I was in a car accident in 2006. It's so crazy because it wasn't even like a major. It was just enough of a bam on the parkway doing 60, both of us, and he hit me dead on straight behind. But
hit you from the back.
Oh, this is not going the way I wanted to. Please help me. James, please jump in. I walked right into that. But I mean, I was able to walk away. I was able to drive away. So yet the damage done was like intense. And it's been,
right?
It's been like reoccurring throughout the years on and off. And this last round of a reoccurrence was like a doozy. So yeah.
You never been the same since, huh?
Stop it, Slappy. Stop it.
Okay. James, same question. Do you have an exercise regimen or health routine? And what is the strongest drug that you've ever been on?
Yeah, my exercise routine from Monday through Friday, I wake up at 4:44 a.m. and I do my Shaolin Kung Fu forms. So I start with a Qigong meditation, do all of my forms, do some weapons forms, do some other things. I meditate again, and then I start my day. So that's my exercise routine, which has kept me young and healthy for a long time and pain-free. You know, I'm 54 years old and have no pain, no issues, no nothing. I'm so thankful for that. And then to your second question, the strongest medication I ever took, I was 15 years old. I needed an appendectomy. My appendix was close to rupturing. And back then, that was 1985. It wasn't like today where they do so many things, you know, the arthroscopic surgeries where you get these little tiny holes. I've got a scar. I've got a legit scar. They cut me open. I spent a week in the hospital, had me on, I believe it was morphine, and it did work. So unlike you, Kristen, it worked for me. The morphine absolutely worked. But what it also showed me was how alluring medications can be. So I made the decision that I was going to stop the morphine. I wasn't going to put there a button that you could push that would give you a dose. And I made the decision. I said, I like this a little too much. I'm not pushing the button anymore. And similar to what you said, Kristen, I left the hospital at 15 years old saying I'm never taking any medication ever, ever, ever again. Now, did I take some since then? Yes, but I can count on two hands since 1985 the number of times I've taken any medication. And when I say any, I'm talking about aspirin, Tylenol, Advil, like at that level. I just won't do it. If I have a headache, I'll meditate through it. If I have a pain, I'll stretch it out. I'll use ice and heat. I'll figure it out. But I do everything I can to not take medication.
I do have a health routine. I go to the gym. I like lifting heavy weights and then running on a treadmill. So that's my thing. I've been doing that for a while, even though I have like the worst diet ever, but which I'm trying to rein in this Ramadan. But I like sugar. That's my thing. I like sugar, but that's my health
You
routine.
and me both, and we both get that from our father.
Yeah, yeah. Anything ice cream related, anything donut related, it's just the worst. And the older you get, the harder it is to take off. So oddly enough, this Ramadan, I did like I've been on a strict regimen, and a lot of that stuff's gone away, and I reduced the amount of sugar. So I hope this lasts after. Yes, Kristen.
Do you guys do sugar alternatives like date syrup and things like that?
Nope.
Doesn't work for you? Okay.
It's not that it doesn't work for me. I have like this really idiotic philosophy. It's like, hey, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So I don't want sweet and low. I don't want less than. Like if I want a cheeseburger, I want a cheeseburger. I don't want a Beyond Burger. I don't want something that tastes like a burger. I want a cheeseburger. Same thing with sugar. If I want sugar, I'm getting sugar. I'm not getting any sort of substitute or anything that tastes kind of like sugar. I want sugar.
You mean the white processed,
The
plain
white
old
processed stuff. Yes. The horrible stuff
not
that's
even
more addictive than cocaine. Yes.
not even brown sugar, just plain old.
Okay, so then that's a different story. It depends on what if it depends on what the dish is. Like if I'm eating yams, that comes with brown sugar. I wouldn't put white sugar on it because I know what my taste buds have been adapted to the taste of that in that particular situation. When it comes to other things, it really doesn't. So brown sugar, yes, I will use brown sugar in certain things, but overall, just as a complete health philosophy, just reduce all of it. I just want to reduce all of it, and I've done a pretty good job within the last 45 to 30 days. Actually, it's been longer than that. It's almost been like since the beginning of the year. Something I started at the beginning of the year, and it's and this particular Ramadan has helped because I'm more aware of it, and I made a conscious effort, but more of a conscious effort, I should say, to reduce the amount of sugar. But
Good for you.
the strongest drug I've ever been on is I've had oxys before because of a hand injury I had. Like I told you, I got an accident in the hand, and I've been on tramadol because from the years of sports and boxing, I have in my left shoulder because I'm a southpaw. Well, my fighting stance is a southpaw. I have calcific tendonitis in my right shoulder, and it flared up one time so bad that I couldn't lift my arm, and the doctor gave me tramadol, and I couldn't feel anything. Like you could have did whatever to my right shoulder, and I would not have felt it. But I didn't like the feeling. I was slept all day. So
What is tramadol?
tramadol is a oxy sort of substitute after the opioid pandemic, after the opioid epidemic, I should say. They started coming up with other drugs that were kind of like an opioid, but different. That you wouldn't, even though they say this is addictive as well, and you shouldn't use the whole cycle of it. Maybe wean yourself off a bit, but what have you. But tramadol is a opioid substitute. It's not oxys, it's not roxys, it's not Vikes or anything like that. It's some substitute. James, what do you think happens after you die? / do you believe in an afterlife?
So I should preface this by saying I'm a Taoist. So my thought on this is that we are all of a higher consciousness right now. We all belong to that, right? We're all a part of that. As human beings, we have the ability to observe it. We can ask questions about it, right? And we can choose to ignore it, which is what creates that illusion of separation. When we die, that ends. That ability to observe what we already belong to ends. But we still belong to that superconscious, that quantum consciousness, that eternal consciousness. We're always one with it. Our ability to observe it independently, or the illusion of independently, goes away. So that's how I view death. I view death as just the closing of a door.
Do you believe in an afterlife?
Not in the way that when people say afterlife, they mean it. There's no afterlife because we're a part of it right now. So we're part of that consciousness as we sit here right now. So when our ability to observe that super conscious stops, we're still a part of it. We just can't observe it or ask questions about it independently. We're only that. So in terms of in the way you're saying afterlife, no, there's one life. There's not one before, not one after. It's all one. It's all one consciousness.
I do feel similar to what James is talking about, that we just kind of rejoin that one. But I do believe also, like, I think I can say, hey, grandma, da 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 da. And I think that I can get a response from who I knew as my grandmother, like that energy or whatever would respond to me in that in that dynamic, because I dreamed about her after she died. There were a couple things that happened too after she died. So I don't think that there's necessarily no, this whole like location and everything is beautiful. You get to the pearly gates and check and see if your name is in the book of lambs. I don't think it's necessarily like that, but I definitely believe that you just kind of rejoin that the big consciousness that like James mentioned. I definitely believe in that, which is what I refer to as love. I think that consciousness is love. So yeah.
So, as I said multiple times on the podcast, I'm Muslim. As a Muslim, we have specific, actually exact things about what happens to you after you die, with regards to what happens in the grave. The grave is a waiting place for Yom Kiyama, which is the day of judgment, where everybody will be judged for their deeds. And after they judged for their deeds, then they are invited into the everlasting life of paradise. So I do believe that. I do believe it. I don't think none of this is a coincidence. I do think that people will be judged for their actions on earth, or for the things that they do on earth, or rewarded for the things that they do on earth. Part of my religious tradition is the idea of the things that happen, what they refer to as the dunya, or this worldly life, is just a test, and it's just a trial, because it's just a momentary trial, even if it's 80 to 100 years, because the true reward is your meeting with God and what happens in the afterlife.
What I love is that we can have that conversation and learn from each other, and it doesn't devolve into what's right, what's wrong, arguments, all that other stuff. We allow each other to have our perspectives, and we can talk about it as adults. So and of course, Christianity was missing from this conversation. I want to acknowledge that as well, as Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, all
Judaism,
the others. There's a lot of other Sufism. There's a lot of other religious, cultural, and spiritual traditions that on how people see death.
If you could go back to any part of your life and do it over, would there be anything you would do differently? And what part of that life would it be? And what would that difference be?
I'd be born to rich parents. No, I'm teasing. That's joking. I'm serious. I'm kidding. Am I? I don't know. I make jokes throughout this entire life that I came in this round to experience being regular, but damn it, I'm tired of this regular. And like growing up, I would make jokes. Oh, I used to be a princess in my last life, but there's a part of me that low-key really believes and feels that way, because certain experiences, I'm like, okay, no, not this. This won't do. This won't work. But I don't know that at this point, it's like, it is what it is. I've lived what I've lived, and I'm just going to ride this out and just try to make the most of the rest of this, as I refer to the ride home.
Do you believe in reincarnation?
I do. And I already informed my mother that next round, I'm going to be her mother. Give it all back to her. I do believe in reincarnation, and I do believe that to some degree we almost kind of keep some of the same players around us because of certain familiarities that I feel like um I recall for some unknown deeper reason. Like the connections sometimes just feel bigger than what I'm aware of on this regular human consciousness level or whatever. Does that make sense? You guys follow that?
Hmm.
I wouldn't change a thing. If I changed anything, even something super small, it might alter the course of my life that led me to this place, to this point. And I'm right where I need to be. I've learned from every mistake I've made. I've learned from every success. I've learned from every perceived failure. I've learned from being attacked. I've learned from just, being just everything. It all counts. So I don't really experience my past as positive or negative, or look at any particular event as not holding value. If you move 1 second of my past, I may not be here, and I'm not willing to risk that. So I would not change a single thing about my life. In terms of reincarnation, I'm on the fence on reincarnation, because while I believe that death is really just the closing of a door, and we just no longer have that ability to kind of independently question this oneness that I believe that we belong to, this eternal consciousness. There's enough people, enough experiences out there that talk about past life regression and things like that, that I would not close the door on that either. So I'm not a person that just believes what I believe and say that's 100% right and there's nothing else. I always leave the door open to learn more and to be open to other information, other things that might alter how I think and feel. So at the moment, am I prepared for another life, or a reincarnation? Not, no, I'm not. But am I open to the idea of it as a possibility? Yeah, I am.
I'm with you on the reincarnation. I'm open to the possibility of it, although I don't. I'm I'm open to the possibility of it. I don't quite think so, but I'm open to the possibility of it. With regards to, is there anything that I would do over again? I thought about that while I was writing the questions out. And of course, all the jokes came aside. All the jokes came first. So I would do this, I would do that. But I gotta say, I'm leaning with you. I don't think I'd be in the space with the people that I know and the situations that I've having currently if I would be here if, some of the stuff you think about, oh, my if I would have avoided this person, or if I'd have made this left instead of this right, or if I'd have saved this money as opposed to spending it on this stupid stuff, maybe I'd be here instead of there. But all the experiences make you who you are, and I kind of like who I am at the moment. So I don't think I would change any of that stuff.
Can I ask a
Last
general
question.
question to both of you? I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
mean to
yeah,
cut you.
go for it. No, go for it. What's the last
Have
question?
either of you ever had any fleeting moment ever of an experience that made you feel like you've been here before? And I'm not talking about deja vu. I mean, just something that was like, this is an unusual familiarity. There's no reason for me to be familiar with this.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have, and even people that I've come across, like, I know you. Why do I know you? Or situations that I thought that I dreamt of, that I thought were dreams, and then they would happen. I think I spoke of that several times, where I would have dreams about certain things, and then the next, like, not even months later, like the next day, they would happen exactly how I dreamt it, and like to a T. Or I've had conversations with people, and I'm like, and I would say, didn't I have this conversation with you? Like, no, I'm telling you this for the first time. Yeah, and there are people who I've met that I came across, like, oh, I know this person. I know this person. I don't know why I know this person, but I know this person.
So how do you
I,
justify that if you, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, James, your turn.
I was just going to say, I'm with Abdul. I have exactly those. The way you described it beautifully, Abdul. It happens so often for me that I just trust it. Like if I'm in a meditation, if it's a dream, if it's whatever, just a moment where I get a flash in my mind, I just trust that that's okay. It's either that in that second I'm learning something from this moment, or it's actually going to happen. And then when it happens, I'm not surprised. I don't usually tell the other person that this is something that I expect it to happen. I try to keep that to myself because there's a reason I was given that heads up, if you will, that this is going to happen. But every time it happens, I appreciate it immensely. And it happens quite often.
I was having this conversation a while ago because of something that I read, and with regards to why do I know I felt like I met this person before? I don't know where this will make sound really, really childish, but I don't know where souls are kept. Are they in an area where, like, if you're a soul, if everybody has a soul and you're all part of this consciousness, right? This soul's conscious, whatever you want to call it. Was that the realm where you know this person from, as opposed to a past life? That's where it becomes sort of the difference I distinguish between the two. Like, was it in a human life form that I've met this person in a past before, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, what have you? Or is it in this realm of spirits where spirits lie, consciousness lie, that's where I met this person, I know this person, or I'm familiar with this person from? That's kind of how I see it, but I don't have the exact answer for it.
And to echo everything you said and fully agree with how you approached it, when I think about the eternal consciousness, if we're all one, then we all have the ability to double click into each other's experiences, right? So what seems like a deja vu, what seems like a psychic impression, what seems like an unsubstantiated familiarity, right? There's no reason for me to be familiar with this person or a situation. Could just be us, vibrating at a particular level that allows us to temporarily tap into what we call the future or what we call another person, right? And then have that experience. And then when it happens, we go, wow, that's familiar, or wow, I saw this coming.
So just to piggyback on that, there is a gentleman named Ed Whitten. His name is Edward Whitten. He's considered the Einstein of our lives. He has a theory called M theory. M theory is about parallel universes and how we're living in 11 different parallel universes at the exact same time. Yeah. There is a woman, whose name is Lisa Randall. Lisa Randall has a theory of M theory, or a theory of parallel universes, which has to do with gravitation. Gravitation talks about, in her theory, gravitation is in a parallel universe that bleeds into our universe. That's why it's so weak. The gravitation is considered one of the 4 fundamental properties. It's the strong force, the weak force, gravitation, and electromagnetism. And they live in these parallel universes. Anyway, there's an idea, there's a belief that frequency, if you can get on the right frequency, you can get into these other dimensions that these other different 11 parallel universes are from.
Yeah, fully agreed on that. Yeah, because M theory, M theory, and now I know we're going real quantum on this, but M theory is an evolution on S theory, on string theory, right? So string theory is where we kind of started, but it didn't explain enough. There was still too many gaps with string theory. M theory tries to close some of those gaps, and like you said, brings in the concept of parallel reality, frequency, and vibration. So it gets really interesting. So yeah, it's a good conversation. Yeah.
So
we're geeking out here.
Yeah. M theory is amazing. M theory is amazing when you understand how everything connects, even dark matter. Like why dark matter is so abundant, why the gravity, the reason why the universe is expanding as opposed to shrinking like they thought it would be, actually expanding. It has to do with gravitation, how it's pushing everything out. And they're saying that the underneath is that there are other things going on behind these 11 parallel universes that's happening to affect our current reality, which is really amazing. But frequency is a part of it, and it's a real thing. Like the way dogs can hear on different frequencies and see, the way cats can see ultraviolet or things in different frequencies that we can't. But it's really interesting stuff when you think about.
Now, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
What you just said is familiar to me, because just this morning I had that thought, and exactly the way you described it in terms of cats and dogs. Literally had that thought in the shower this morning.
So you were quantum leaping earlier today, is what you're saying.
That's right. And now normally I wouldn't say anything, but because we're on a
Yeah.
podcast, and it's just funny that it showed up here. But yes, that's exactly what I had that thought this morning.
One of these episodes, I do want to get into Ed Witten's idea of M theory because it's really interesting. Maybe get a scientist on there, but really explore that because, Kristen, when you hear it, some of it sounds like the writings of the ancient Egyptians, except they wrote it in their language as opposed to writing it in these scientific terms.
Got it. Why don't you get Neil deGrasse?
Because I don't know Neil deGrasse. I can ask him. I'll invite him. I have no problem inviting him.
Why don't you quantum leap and introduce yourself?
Now, can I just, to your point on the ancient Egyptians, for those who don't know, that class of priests that had this knowledge were actually called Jedi. DJEDI. Jedi.
Yeah.
So the whole concept of Star Wars and the Jedi come from ancient Egypt. Sorry, just putting the cap on the nerd.
Oh, he man, can I tell you, he stole a lot of that stuff from ancient Egypt and ancient mysticism and things. A lot. Yeah. A lot. Anyway, here's the last question for the section.
I'm a fan of the 3 initiates, by the way.
All right.
Kabbalion.
Okay.
Hermetic philosophy.
Yeah.
That's my Bible. Thank you.
Have you ever read the Emerald Tablets?
Nope.
You should. You have it? Oh yeah.
I don't have it. Yeah, I have it electronically. I don't have it in the library behind me.
Yeah, no, I have the book. But anyway, okay. Last questions. Is there anyone that you absolutely don't want at your funeral? Kristen.
You know what? I hopefully will not be there, so I really don't care.
You don't care.
I really want to hope that I don't care because hopefully I won't be there.
Okay. James?
I mean, I might zip back and check in, but
okay. James, is there anyone you absolutely don't want at your funeral?
No specific person, but in general, I wouldn't want anyone there that would disturb the healing process that folks would go through. With anyone who passes away, there are going to be people that are hurt by it, that are going to miss them. And there's a healing that comes with mourning. So if someone's going to be there with the express purpose of interrupting that healing for other people, those are the folks I wouldn't want there. But typically that, doesn't happen. You hope it won't happen. But no one in particular. No.
Not only do I have people that I don't want at my funeral, I have
serious?
some shoot on sites. I got some shoot on sites.
Are you serious? You better be joking.
I'm dead ass. I'm dead ass.
You have people that you really don't want at your funeral?
I don't want, do not show up. Don't come here.
Why? Who? I don't want to know who, but why?
I don't want the hypocrisy at my funeral. I want this to be a good event. I don't want people who I know absolutely are there for the show or there to get or there to disturb or there to use. I know people like that who would probably show up and be like, oh, and just to see, or some people are just there for the show. Wow. Some people I've been to enough funerals to have seen the show and to see people act out and to see, oh, okay. And then I look at people that I know like, oh, they would probably do that or they would probably do that. Or so, yeah, here's a crazy story. A friend of mine recently told me that she was at a funeral and the people who killed the guy came to the funeral. He was in a gang or something like that. They came to the funeral and shot at his friends who were also part of his gang. So not only did they kill him, they went to the funeral to shoot at the other people. Mind you, this was my friend's nephew, she teaches a high school, and she was it was younger people. It wasn't older people. It was younger people.
Slappy, that scenario makes sense for gangbanging and that lifestyle.
Yes.
Right. That's
I
a
don't understand that for you.
legitimate strategy for eliminating an enemy.
I don't understand you literally having people that you're like, do not come to my funeral because you're gonna XYZ. You have people that
I'm
you
not gonna
feel
harm them. I
like,
just don't want them. I'm joking about the shoot on sight. I'm not gonna
right,
harm
but
them,
you
but
don't want them like these people are currently in your life that
no,
you
no, not currently in my life. I just know they show up.
okay.
I know they show up. Here's the better thing. I got some people I don't want at other people's funeral.
This
God
guy.
forbid,
And what
100 years from now, however it is, if my father passes away, certain people better not show up if I'm there. Like you and you better not show up. Because I will escort you out of this facility by the scruff of your neck.
You are so protective of your father. It is hilarious.
Well,
James,
with
I
good
couldn't
reason.
even ask, like, how's your dad? Why? Like, how's your dad? I'm not trying to be his bestie. I just wanted to say hello.
Hold up. Is my father super dick?
Oh my God.
Is
Please retract that.
that why you keep asking how my dad is?
Oh my
Is
God.
that the reason?
And comedy goes completely wrong. So wrong.
Yo, you crazy, man.
Absolutely
You
wrong.
crazy.
I'm not
You
even going
crazy.
to that wasn't funny at all. That was
It
like
was
just
absolute.
that's just
That's-
no, that's just off the charts. But he used to be so protective.
That's
Like,
a
oh, how's
mess,
your dad?
man.
Oh, because he talked
Yeah.
about it. I knew his dad did to him, and then he'd be like, "Wow, why you want to know?" I'm like, I don't. Never mind.
Learning things every day, Kristen. Every day.
You mess, man.
All right.
Just one thing I wanted to mention though, is
Uh-huh.
which I found interesting because of the three philosophies that we have. I'll call them philosophies for lack of a better term, with religion, spirituality, philosophy. Um, because Abdul, in your tradition, the soul moves on and is
Mhm.
judged, right?
Mhm.
There's still a consciousness that is Abdul as a part of
Mhm.
that. And you're protecting that consciousness, looking at your funeral and saying, why are those people there? Right? They shouldn't be there. Because in your tradition, there would still be some knowledge of that and being able to interpret what's still happening, right? For me, because I don't see that as an individual soul, I see everything as an eternal consciousness. There's no separation that would still exist called James that would be able to even see the funeral. So
Mhm.
for me, it's like do what you will, you know. So I just found that interesting. I learned from that just from this conversation. So thank you for that.
And I'm
Even more,
Goldilocks in the middle. I don't even care. I would see and know and still not care.
Yeah.
even more to the point, I think it's, if I'm being 100% honest, it's probably more, I don't want you disturbing the people grieving. And I know there'd be
Same point that I made. Yeah.
disruptive
Yeah.
people there.
Got
So,
you. Got you. Yeah. So you
so yeah, there's some people I just like,
get
yeah, don't
shifts for
even,
the people themselves that are there. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's for the,
It is the same thing that James said, but you sound like you would have a scheduled email to go out to those people.
there would be there'd be a video.
List.
No, I was sitting in front of a video, after I die, play this. Yeah. And I'd run on the list. Yeah, pull that list out. Rashida, Tony, Raheem.
Rolling like credits.
Yeah.
It'd be
It'd be
a scroll
credit
that
roll.
come down.
It'd be a credit roll of the people who couldn't come to my funeral. Yeah.
Oh, slap
Yeah,
it.
With commentary. And Mr. Jenkins, cracker ass, cracker. I knew you never liked me.
That's good.
Right. So we're going to go on to the final section. And after that, I only have one question before we get into the life lesson part of it. So when you're ready, take it away.
On to a normal hospital ward. After a month and a half in intensive care, I was eventually weaned off the stronger drugs and dialysis machine and became strong enough to be transferred to a normal hospital ward. It was a pretty scary experience as I was still unable to move much, and I was used to the attention of a single nurse per patient that is required for patients on an intensive care ward. Being on a standard ward meant a 1 to 15 nurse to patient ratio, and this was initially very hard to deal with. I was still coming to terms with trying to eat properly again, and this was difficult given the lack of good hospital food. I appreciate that hospitals aren't five-star restaurants, but when you're trying to recover from illness, the bland hospital food really doesn't help with improving an appetite, nor with your mental well-being. The nurses on the standard wards were helpful, but it was hard getting used to having to wait for care. I started to have daily physiotherapy visits, and they helped me get out of bed. I used to really look forward to their twice daily visits as they were both a lovely team of people, and I knew that the only way I would be able to leave the hospital was by learning to walk again. Getting to the point of walking with a pair of crutches or walking frame without fainting due to my low blood pressure took just over another month, by which time I'd been in the hospital for a total of 3 months. By this time, I had very little feeling in my feet and still don't. And the necrotic tissue on my toes, this is when the tissue is dying. In my case, due to the lack of blood to my feet whilst being given inotropes to keep me alive. I was told that I was likely to lose some of the tissue from my toes, but they were unable to tell me how much. In passing, I was told by one of the ITU nurses that I was lucky I still had both feet, as at one point in the first week, there was a discussion as to whether my feet should have been amputated in order to in order to stem the toxic reaction that my body was having. I had to see the positives in this. Once I proved that I could walk some steps, I had to be seen by an occupational therapist who would help me to recuperate from my incredible illness. I was taught to navigate a small flat using a walking frame and crutches. I had to make a cup of tea and learn how to sit down and get back up and out of a lounge chair. I eventually worked up to being able to make a bacon sandwich on my own to go with the cup of tea. An incredibly British thing to do, but I was proud to have the energy to eventually be able to perform what was once such a basic task. Finally, with the ability to do basic tasks around the home and with the energy to be able to climb up and down a small set of stairs, both the physiotherapist and occupational therapist agreed that I was able to come home. It was an amazing feeling to know that I'd be able to come home and to hug my wife and children properly, even if I could only really remember what home was like due to my mental state. Coming home. On September 18, 2014, 2 days before my 90th day in the hospital, I was allowed to return home, and then my recovery really began. Most people assume that when you return from the hospital that you're healed. In most cases, you probably are. You might have a few weeks of getting better, but generally you're okay. In my case, I really wasn't. I had a stoma bag to deal with. I still had a catheter that they had been unable to remove yet. I could barely walk without being exhausted or fainting. I had daily visits from district nurses who had to deal with the necrotic tissue on my feet, dressing it as best as they could to help it heal or fall off, whilst being mindful of my constant worry that I'd have to have toes amputated. Eventually, it became apparent that I'd need to have a debridement of the necrotic tissue. But given that it was deep on my right toe, this actually meant an operation which ended up with the amputation of half of the toe. Looking at the bigger picture of still being alive, this seemed rather minor, but it was still a mental challenge to accept that you will lose a part of your body. I accepted medical opinion, but I knew that it would have a knockoff effect of changing my gait, which would affect my ability to walk and increase the potential for further complications. Just over 2 years later, I've had the toes on my right foot pinned and straightened due to ulcers forming due to my toes becoming clawed. I hope this is the final operation, but I'm pragmatic enough to understand that it might well not be. After 6 weeks of being home, I managed to have the catheter removed, which is never a fun experience. After 8 months, I was told that I would be able to have my stoma removed, meaning that my lower intestines would be reattached and I'd be able to function normally again. It was a major operation, but it felt like I was getting back to my normal again. In May 2015, I had the operation and I was able to go to the toilet as I used to. The new normal. As I write this, it is November 2016, and it was just over 2 years since the madness of this part of my life occurred. People often assume that I'm now better. I guess I am to a certain extent. I'm definitely better than I was when I contracted streptococcus group A and sepsis. However, I'm acutely aware that I'll probably never be fully better, so we've had to define what we call the new normal. This means that I'll probably never run that half marathon that I was training for when I got ill back in June 2014. Not being able to feel my feet properly due to peripheral neuropathy means that it will be easy for me to get sores without realizing it. Doing so could easily mean getting an infection and losing more toes, which is something I'm hoping to avoid in the future. Suffering from constant hypersensitivity due to the neuropathy means pretty constant pain in my feet, but this is something I just deal with without much complaint. As I mentioned earlier, I'm still pretty happy that my feet weren't removed in intensive care. I've always been pretty positive about these things. The new normal means thinking about things differently. It means planning holidays, which are easy for me to deal with, where I don't have to do too much walking. It means accepting that I'll never run again, but instead thinking of another way of exercising, which has lower impact, such as cycling. It means setting myself new challenges and spending time with my family in the ways that I can. I'll never be the same as I was, but that doesn't really matter anymore. What really matters is that I'm still here with Claire and my children.
I only have one question for this section. We're going to start with you, Kristen, and I need you to be detailed in your response. What do you think the purpose of life is?
I think the purpose of life is for our souls or whatever energy we are to have a physical experience, various physical experiences. I do believe we choose those, but I think it's just to have physical experiences, and that's it, no more, no less.
Just to have physical experiences. What do you do with those physical experiences, do you think? Are they just there just to have happen? Or are they like, what's the purpose of those experiences?
I don't know that I necessarily embrace like purpose to a degree that a lot of times we do. I feel like we put a lot more meaning onto things than it actually is. Like I know in your faith, you believe in tests and for a purpose and a reason for an after. I don't necessarily adhere to that with what I believe. I think some things just are for the sake of an experience, not necessarily for purpose, unless it's a purpose that we define for ourselves in this existence, in this physical existence.
Yeah.
And I'm just living life. I mean, that's it.
Living life like you're golden.
No, I'm just living life.
This is a multi-level, multi-dimensional question. Answer. How about that? First dimension. I honestly believe that the purpose, for me, the purpose of life is for the eternal consciousness to experience itself. So that's part one. A lot of people are going to rock with that. I'll leave it at that. That for me, that is probably the deepest thing I could say, and it's absolutely true, and it's what I honestly believe. The next level down, I believe that the purpose of life comes down to the purpose you decide to bring to it. So we're all born into this life with certain skills, certain abilities, certain interests. What do you do with those? So there's a say that we have as free-willed beings that are capable of independent thought that can decide, here's what the purpose of my life will be. So I think some of it is, again, part of it is, in my opinion, one dimension is I'm born into this life to be, for the eternal consciousness to experience itself. There's another part that says, okay, but with these gifts, now that I'm here, I can choose what I do with it as well. And that's honestly what I believe.
I believe in my religious tradition that we refer to this worldly life as the dunya, that is just a test and a trial to get to or see the afterlife and what happens in the afterlife. This is just the test before the big event. And based on what happens here, we will be rewarded or punished or what have you within the afterlife. But all the things that we go through here is just a test of the soul, test of the spirit, just a test to see how you behave in this particular life. With that being said, Kristen, What lesson did you learn from this story?
I need to continue to be more present and enjoy myself more. I think that's the story in every day that I live. I need to just get into it and relax and definitely release more, release things that I hold on to that I think are restrictive, and just live and relax and keep it moving.
James, the same question.
I have a couple. So the first thing is appreciate the simple things. What I loved about his story was he talked about how there was a threat of losing his feet. What ended up happening was he lost a part of his big toe and had the threat of losing his additional toes. But when you juxtapose that against the fact that he's still here, that he's still living his life, he was like, I get it. Like it wasn't. It was, of course, it's a traumatic experience to have that happen, but not as traumatic as not being here at all to experience it. So I appreciate that he appreciated the fact that him breathing and still being here was the big value, and losing other things weren't as significant. So he did see that. The second thing I'll mention is that even when you're surviving life-threatening situations, there is a mourning for what's lost. So allow yourself to mourn. You know, he was bedridden for a long time, and it took 2 years to get back to what he would call that new normal. But you mourn what you lost there. During that time, he lost time with his family. He lost abilities. He was training for a marathon, a half marathon, which he won't run, or may have to, if he does decide to do it, it would have to do it differently than he imagined. So there is a space for mourning what's lost when you go through a life-threatening situation like that. And we have to not feel guilty about that, but allow ourselves to go through it. What I love about his story also is that he never mentioned being that he mistreated the people that were caring for him, nor did they mistreat him. So I say that to say our medical professionals are under severe stress all the time. They're caring for a lot of people on a daily basis, and they see death far often than the rest of us do. Treat your medical professionals well. They're there to care for you, so please care for them. I would also say that you are not your body. So again, this is me being a Taoist. I don't believe that I am my body. I believe that I am an eternal consciousness that through this body is having this human experience. And the day will come where I'll have to turn these clothes back in, you know, and on that day, the door closes and that's that, you know. So you're not your body, but you need your body. The ability to care for this body directly determines how long you're here to have this experience. So if you're abusing your body, drugs, alcohol, just mistreatment all around, you are literally shortening your life, which shortens your experience. And then you're not allowing the eternal consciousness to have your unique perspective for as long as it possibly could. And then the last thing I'll mention is, and which also was not in his story, but something I thought about, which is medical bankruptcy, right? So when you spend that much time in the hospital and you have to see that many specialists, you are racking up expenses. Now, in other countries, they have ways of dealing with that, and some people would like to call that socialism, right? In America, a capitalist society, we have insurance, but it certainly doesn't cover everything. And I've seen more than my share of people who have had significant medical issues that have caused very high medical bills into the hundreds of thousands and into the millions of dollars. And then that has been a life-altering experience just in itself. So just to cover the expenses for the care that they received. So we got to keep that in mind as well, that there are people who are suffering through medical financial issues because of, just for surviving, or even if they didn't survive, their families then assuming some of those bills. So medical expenses do they change lives and change the trajectory of lives.
What I learned from this episode is something that I've been conscious of for a while, but even in this particular month of religious month for me, is just mercy and grace that you've been given. The fact that things can go left at a split second, and you don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know how it's going to be. Sometimes in people's lives, that death might be more of a mercy than living, because now you don't got a leg or an arm, or you got to you have something in your throat, the living might be more difficult. So I'm just thankful of the mercy and grace that I have every day to have, full bodily autonomy and my limbs work and things of that nature. And I also, the second part was just being thankful. Honestly, just being thankful for the little things, the things that you don't even think of. Like James mentioned earlier, toes. I mean, you don't know how toes, the guy can't run anymore. The guy was training for a marathon, how important toes are, how important just the things that we don't even think about that we have. You know, that's the lesson I learned. Just being grateful and constant thanks and constant, you just be more conscientious of the things that you do have and less conscientious of the things that you don't have. Because in a split second, you can go from having it to not having it. Yes,
I
Kristen.
mentioned three things really
Yeah.
quick. Go,
Who are you?
Kristen. Yep.
Who are you? Who was that guy just talking? Like, who are you? And what did you do with that tool?
So I had a joke that I was gonna talk
Of
about when
course
James
you
talked.
did.
Because
Of course.
James was like, you are not your body. And I'm like, guess who's not super dick?
Oh my gosh.
But
Here he is. He's back. He's back.
yeah.
Okay, he's back.
Oh, you're a mess, man. You're a mess.
But anyway, so I decided to go, the good route, and here you go, bringing me back.
Yeah, I
Mm-mm.
did that right. James, I'm
Your
sorry.
fault.
You were gonna say something eloquent.
No, that was perfect. No,
Um,
nothing eloquent, but just three things that I would close for me. I'm going to close out on. Number one, I actually do have a friend who had a heart attack. He had open heart surgery, and he was allergic to the blood thinners they gave him, which caused an issue with the circulation of blood in his body. He ended up having four of his five toes on one foot amputated. So when they talk about the change in his gait in this story, the way he walks, like he walks with one foot kind of to the side now, right? It literally changed the way he moves. And there was a threat there for a while that he might have some additional toes amputated, but he's grateful for his life. But that was, like you said, Abdul, just a fairly routine surgery, we'll call it, for open heart surgery. It's become something that people go through, and there's a high chance of survivability. But the unexpected happened. He was allergic to one of the medications they gave him, and four of the five toes had to be removed on one foot. So those things can happen. Second thing I would leave you with is one of my close friends I grew up with has a daughter who was one of the top gymnasts in the world. They live in a different country, and top gym, just young teenager, just killing it and doing a rather routine thing on a balance beam, had an accident, something she'd done thousands of times. But in that moment, just one thing went wrong, and now she's a quadriplegic. And she's been recovering ever since then. What I love about what she's doing is that she's using that platform to help other people understand that though she went through this horrific situation, and she's absolutely still struggling with it, she is smiling through it and powering through her therapy. She has high hope for regaining more and more function, and she's thinking about how she can impact other people who have gone through something similar. So even though she lost the opportunity to go to the Olympics, which was part of the conversation for her, and even to just be a normal teenager, just looking back at the simple things, she's going, okay, this is my new reality. What can I do with it? And that's just such an empowering place to be. Even though she's suffering still, she still has those moments of just severe loss and grief, and those are expected, and she'll have those moments for the rest of her life. But overall, still looking to do a positive thing there. The third thing I would leave you with is something that I'll say it this way. I went through a death meditation years ago, to imagine, what would it be like to not be here anymore. And one of the things that it was funny, pretty soon after doing that meditation, I ran across this quote that said, "Death stands behind my left shoulder." And it made so much sense to me after doing that death meditation. And the interpretation of that quote is, at any point in time, if death is standing behind your left shoulder, at any point in time, it can just go tap, tap, tap. and that's it. That's your moment, right? You're gone. So we need to live our lives recognizing that there is no promise for tomorrow. And as my friend Tony Russo's taught me, there's not even a promise of later today, right? And at any point in time, you can get that tap on the shoulder, and then that's your time. That's it. So we need to really, you can choose to do whatever you want with your life. As I mentioned, you bring the purpose to your life, you bring the meaning to it. But if there's really things you want to get done, why are you waiting? You may be waiting for a time that may not ever come. So experience what you want to experience, do what you need to do. Find out how to experience what you want to experience, because later isn't a guarantee.
We have a cousin named Eric LeGrand. I don't know him well at all. I know James doesn't know him well at all, but
No,
he was a college football player at Rutgers University, and in a split second, he's paralyzed.
that's
Just
right.
like that. He's been all over the news, and people know
That's your
about him. And yeah,
He's our
La-
cousin.
last
Yeah.
name is LeGrand.
Yeah,
Okay.
I never met him. No, I never met him. I think Abdul, you met him?
Our younger brother, who's 8 years younger than me, so he got to be a couple years more than that for James. I believe went to school with him,
Okay.
but I believe he knows him a little bit, but not well. We have other cousins who know him really well, but we're all
Our
from the
family is that big, by the
yeah,
way,
we're all
that we could
we're all from
we
we
got
all
family
lived
we
in
don't
this
know.
yeah, we're all from the central Jersey area, so it's like Colonia,
Yeah.
Plainfield. So those know him better than the ones who live in Elizabeth and
Right.
Newark, what have you. So it's
Right.
proximity is more of it, the reason.
Right.
But yeah, so and I've heard interviews with him and him say same thing. One day you're walking fine, like you walk to the game fine, and then that's the last time you walk. That got that's up. Our father, back in younger, when we were younger, used to take care of a guy named Frankie, who was paralyzed. And same thing happened to him. He was playing a high school football game, got hit. That was the last time he walked. When I met him, he had to be in his late 20s, maybe 30s, late 20s, 30s. And this happened to him in high school. And he lived a long time after that. So imagine the last time you're ever being able to physically walk is high school. And now you're in your 30s and beyond. And they gave him all this money. They gave him a ton of money because of the accident, millions because of this accident. And he would give it all back just to walk. With that being said, please like, share, and subscribe to Instagram Is Contagious Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter page. And until next time, Kristen.
Hey, everybody. I love you all.
The Rock is in the building. Facto.